I crafted some aged paper for use as props in role-playing games, and in this video I will share how you can craft some for your tabletop. Good day or night to you, and welcome to the Gaming Tome. Today is going to be a little different. I'm not going to be crafting something miniature, although the topic is relevant to miniature gaming through tabletop role-playing games. We are going to talk about this. Homemade aged paper. These are simple to make and very useful for creating prop, ancient documents. I've used them to make maps and scrolls to hand out to my players in Dungeons & Dragons, and I've also used them in a bunch of videos, like whenever I do this, or on my other channel when I do this. Next turn. And they're also just really useful for waving around when you make declarations and proclamations and whatnot. Anyway, chances are you already have all of the ingredients to craft yourself a batch of these, so let's get crafting. This project uses plain printer paper, tea or coffee, an oven, baking sheets or pans, and a casserole dish. First, make some tea or coffee. Now, which should you use? Well, it depends on what you want the paper to smell like. But more importantly, it depends on what coloration patterns you want the paper to take on. In my experience, tea is good for making the paper solid beige, which looks old but not ancient. Coffee has very fine sediments among the larger, more granular grounds. That sediment can adhere to the paper to create more texture and discoloration. When you make the tea or coffee, pour it into the casserole dish, grounds and all, or leaves and all if you're making tea. And by casserole dish, I mean the actual pan that the casserole is made in, not like dish as in, that's a good dish. Casseroles are not a prerequisite to aged paper. You don't need you just need the dish, okay? You get me, right? Leave a comment down below if you get me. You understand. Now that we've gotten that cleared up, submerge a sheet of printer paper into the tea or coffee and move it around a little. Try to get some of the fine sediments, grounds, and tea leaves on top of the paper before lifting the sheet out. Transfer the paper to a baking sheet or metal pan once it has been fully soaked. There are two ways to proceed. If you want a more uniform coloration, then just put the pan in the oven as is. If you want a darker, more textured coloration, then pour extra tea or coffee onto the paper and bake it like that. The water will evaporate, leaving behind those extra sediments that create streaks and splotches all over the paper. In my experience, this makes the paper look a lot older and adds a cool darkened edge, but it only affects the top face of the sheet. This also works better with coffee because of the more prevalent fine sediments that I mentioned earlier. The oven will dry the paper out quickly. 5 to 10 minutes at 300 degrees Fahrenheit worked well for me. Take the paper out as soon as it is dry. You will know it is dry because it'll start curling and warping, causing it to stand up off of the baking sheet. There may be a dusting of sediments on the surface of the paper from the tea or coffee that has evaporated. You don't want that stuff on there. It looks like soot and it gets all over everything. Just wipe that off with a dry towel. If you want the paper to look darker, then simply repeat the process. And that is it. Pretty easy. Dip the paper in tea or coffee, put it in a pan, maybe pour a little extra liquid on top, and bake. I made a few batches of aged paper myself. Let's take a look at them. Here are 2 batches of aged paper made using tea. This batch was made by dipping the paper in tea and removing it and baking it as is. This batch was soaked in the tea, removed, and then extra tea was poured on top of it, and it was baked like that. And just for comparison, here is a plain unaltered sheet of the printer paper I used. You can see there's not much difference between these two. This is definitely not a bright white. It's more of like a kind of a cream color. This one's darker, a little warmer. It's got a fine texture of like spider webbing, watermarks, and stains on the paper itself. The edges are also darker. This one's definitely much more aged looking. Batches 3, 4, and 5 were made all using coffee, with standing pools of coffee that evaporated to leave an overall more coarse texture. These ones underwent 1 round of soaking and baking. These underwent 2 rounds. This batch underwent 3 rounds of soaking and baking, but it looks the same as this, and I think that's because the 3rd round I did not pour the coffee on top when it was in the pan, so I think the dip reduced what had happened in the 2nd round. The coffee dipped papers do have a more noticeable staining pattern of splotches and the occasional streak like this. The edges are noticeably darker too, like this edge, which is very dark brown. It looks almost burnt, which is probably a desirable effect if you want to make some really old looking aged paper. For comparison, here's that plain unaltered sheet of printer paper. You can definitely see the difference between a sheet like this and the printer paper. This looks really old and really interesting, really cool. And this one that only had 1 round still looks pretty cool. This one's probably on par with the tea dipped paper. I also have some batches that I made last year. Some of them look the same as the ones I've made for this video to show it off. And then others, like these, look much different. The reason why this looks different is because I poured really concentrated coffee on top of these sheets and then sponged it off with a paper towel before baking. What happened was the woven pattern of the paper towel shaped the sediments left behind into a kind of grid weave pattern. As you can see, there is room for experimentation in this project, all sorts of opportunities to dial in the discoloration to achieve the look you want. These pieces of aged paper are simple to make and they look awesome. They're fun when paired with ink and a dip pen or just a paintbrush. I've made some props before using this aged paper. I wrote a couple of letters to use as hooks for a dungeon in my Dungeons & Dragons campaign, a way to get the player's interest and draw them in to a location that I had been preparing. I was also able to draw out a map on another piece, so that looks much more interesting than a plain sheet of printer paper with a map on it. Now it's got this cool texture to it. I have also been able to put some of this stuff through the printer. I printed out this hex map of the immediate region that the adventuring party has been exploring. I also printed out some spell scrolls to use as props. I downloaded fantasy fonts, and I think I just typed out the rules for a spell in this mysterious, unreadable font. Who knows what language it is? I don't remember. They may look familiar. Yeah, this one's probably like Dwarvish. Anyway, I was able to put some sheets of this stuff through my printer. They were flattened out because they had been in a folder for a long time, being compressed, smushed flat, and that helped. Your printer may reject the aged paper because it's not flat enough. My printer rejected one particular sheet multiple times. And so what I'm trying to say is I will not be held responsible for broken printers. Put this paper through your printer at your own peril. I don't want to be involved in no printer problems, okay? I have enough as is. These are fun to wave around. I love them. That will conclude the video. If you want to see more of this paper in action being used as a prop, then you can check out my other channel where I've been wildly waving this around, gesticulating, making proclamations as I read the news of the realm in my Middle-earth Total War campaign. I've been playing as Mordor. I'm the Dark Lord over there, and it is not easy work. Speaking of channels, this channel, The Gaming Tome, has reached 1,000 subscribers. Yay! Yes, we did it. For that, I say thank you to all who have watched my videos, and I hope that I can keep making some more better, cooler stuff. I got some really cool things coming up. It's the same stuff that I said was really cool and coming up 2 months ago, which is a disappointment. But it is cool stuff. I've been making some cool terrain. It's taken a while, and I want to do it right, though. So I'll get there eventually. For now, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you did not, then tell me why. If you want to see more content, then scrawl a scribble upon the scroll and wave it through the air to and fro, here and there, like a madman, gesticulating as you say, no, proclaim that you shall press the subscribe button of subscription forthwith. And so, I don't know about you, but I think that was an effective proclamation right there. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep making and keep playing. Have a good one. You could have a casserole. You could bring a casserole to your crafting station